Hi guys, we are back again with MVB Live TV. We will continue from the previous topic, but if you did not see the previous topic, we're gonna make sure we introduce ourselves first. I'll now start from my right hand side.
Hi guys, my name is Octavia.
Hi, I'm Dawn.
I'm Malini.
I'm George.
I'm Aiden.
Okay, and we are the crew at New Directions Bible Temple, breaking down the world, trying to save ourselves and save the world through Jesus Christ. Amen. So our topic of continuation now is, why do you think there are few men in church? We'll start with the guys because this references you a lot. Why are there few guys in church?
Where do I even start from?
It's a lot.
I Who was first tempted in the Bible? Eve. And then Eve went and dragged the man. So the reason why there are few men in the church means the women are not dragging the men to church.
But you guys are supposed to be the head. Why should the women be dragging the men?
I I was gonna lead somewhere. I was gonna go somewhere differently with that. I think there's less men in the church because I think, and this is from what I've heard other people say and from my personal opinion in the past, I feel like the conception of the church and what men in the church look like is not, it's not very masculine, being honest. Like I feel like if you look at, you know, like Hebrew Israelites, you see they be in the park like doing push-ups and stuff, fighting, like getting strong. Yeah, the Nation of Islam is the same way, but it's like when you go to the church, there's no masculinity in the church. And I feel like as men in the church, we have to do better with, you know, displaying those masculine qualities for younger men. And I think yeah, I think masculinity is a big issue, personally.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
I'll reiterate a little bit more on that. Octavia, what do you think? Why do you think there are a few men in church? Just from your observation.
From my observation, and then for people that I do know, the reason why I think they don't come is because, like Ada said, the perception and also just um, them feeling judged, right? From who they are, what they do, and all those things, and them feeling maybe not accepted, right? And then also, I think another thing is that it's not, maybe also maybe their background, maybe they didn't grow up into a church, right? Maybe they did things like at home or whatever the case may be. So I feel like all those components definitely make people feel like they don't want to come to church.
That makes a lot of sense. Dawn?
Um, I've asked a couple of men, and some of them feel like there's a certain level of emotion that happens in church or church service, and they don't. They say they can't connect to it, and they feel like church is for women. Um, I'm not really entirely sure what that means.
I felt that way.
But there are also, my opinion is that, because a lot of men say when they come to Christ later in their years, they say, well, I wanted to do my own thing, which is what most people do until they're ready to not do their own thing. So I think for men, it might be a little harder for them to give up their own thing because of their natural makeup to want to be the leader of their own show. They want to helm their own, they want to be the one to make a decision. And the idea of consulting with God about a decision, when a lot of the time that consultation would mean that they can't do what they want to do. So they'd rather not. So they don't entertain it. They don't approach it. It's not something they're ready or to. They're not ready or willing to give up their own self-propelled desires in life. And I think that might be why we don't see a lot of men make that decision to go, to come to Christ, to come to church and stuff like that.
Okay. George, you wanted to say something before?
I
continue?
think every point that I have come across, I totally agree with them. You know, being so weak, being unable to make certain, it's like when someone slap you, turn the other side for the person to like really. So all of these things they add up, right? Which
Right.
I absolutely agree with them. Why men don't come to church? Um, anyway, I grew up in the church, so I don't really have a lot. And I don't think we have actually talked much about it, like among friends and stuff. So my best guess will be, and I'm sure Don also mentioned that, like giving everything to God when you think you have to make a move, when you think you have to make to decide on things, but you have to wait and go according to the principles. And that makes me say this: following rules and principles are really, really hard to follow. So it makes it difficult for a man to just leave everything that they have to do, they know they can do, and just say, this is what the Bible says, so I shouldn't do it. So following the rules and traditions makes it hard for them to come to church and just say, don't do this because the Bible says don't do it. Don't act this way because the Bible says don't do it. Those principles hinder most men from being able to do what makes man somehow.
I think the culture plays a
Yes.
big role in it too, because like growing up, you don't look at going to church as cool, and when you're growing up, when you're like a teenager, everything has to be cool. Like if it's not cool, it's like what are we doing? So like for me, I would dread going to church. Like I'd be like, I'm not trying to be here. I'd be sleeping in service because one, I didn't see the importance of it, and just the perception of, again, like the perception of church is like, or rather men in church is like kind of, if I'm gonna be honest, kind of squarish. Like when you think about a guy in church, you think about like a square guy who like never says the wrong thing or is not afraid to be bold, or and that's a false perception because we see tons of bold people in the Bible, but it's just like what you see, what you think of when you think of, oh, I'm going to church, or my uncle's taking me to church. Who am I going to see there? You know, that's just what you think about. Yeah.
I love that. So I have a question for you, Aiden. You said your perception used to be like that before, right?
Yeah.
But over time, it changed.
Yeah.
And now we see you and you're doing some manly stuff, doing the tech stuff, and serving in the house of the Lord. What was the turning point for you? What clicked and made you change that perspective from your point of view?
Just understanding that God is not legalistic. God doesn't want me to wear like corduroy pants and polos and, you know, talk a certain way. Like I can still be myself and love God. Yeah, and like understanding that church is different. Like there's a separation between the typical church and who God wants us to be as people. And just coming to terms with understanding that there's a lot of misconceptions. Like the church propagates a lot of what do I say? The church propagates, huh?
Bad rep.
Yeah, like there's a lot of just misconceptions, thinking that, you know, you can't have long hair and be in church, or you can't be yourself. You can't make jokes and be in church. Like I used to think like that. I used to walk on eggshells when I was talking to people at church because I don't want them to look at me a certain type of way. Yeah.
So most of it is like expectations, right? And things that we think, but it's not really what it should be.
Yeah.
So I did ask a couple of guys, what their take was. Like, why do you think a lot of guys are not coming? And one of them is sitting at the back. He said, well, because guys have to make money. And so I asked him, I was like, well, don't women have to make money too? And then he said, well, guys have to make more money. So I guess depending on what your level of responsibility, I suppose, for a family. If you are the one who's the breadwinner and you have to work really, really hard, and maybe you don't have the ideal job. So sometimes he was stating that sometimes work is the reason why some men are not able to make it to church because they have to make ends meet, you know? And it's not necessarily that they don't want to come, it's just work. And then I did ask another gentleman, and then he said traditional masculine roles may lead men to prioritize work over other activities, over church attendance, which is what you guys mentioned. Um, and then another guy said, well, it depends on the demographic and the population, the age and ethnicity. Because sometimes when you go to church, maybe you don't have people around the same age group as you that you can really gel with. Let's say you go to church and it's just old men. There's no young men, and you feel like you don't really fit in place. So you just be like, oh, I'd rather be on the basketball court with my friends than to go. So that was another reason. And then he was saying some cultures never emphasize or train their sons that it's important that they go to church. So it's like the mothers would just carry the daughters and run to church. Maybe the father is busy welding outside and working outside, so they just leave the boy with the dad. And maybe the dad will take the boy for soccer practice or game practice. They prioritize those physical attributes more because they're saying, oh, church is more emotional stuff. So it's almost like a weakness of like, oh, you go, let the girls go with their mother, that kind of thing. And it's a misconception. So it's like whatever you allow. So if your own husband is not coming, then don't expect your son to come because obviously the son is going to want to do what dad is doing. So let's say the father is working all the time on Sundays and all that stuff. The boy might be like, oh, dad, can I go with you to work? Instead of, oh, dad, can I go with mom to church? You understand? So over time, this child is growing and they are growing in the things of the world, but they don't have no knowledge or understanding of God. And then the other one was they just lack spiritual connection. Men may not feel a strong spiritual connection or sense of purpose in attending. So it almost sounds like to me that men want to come to church when they feel a sense of purpose. Is that true? Like you have something you do there that propels and pulls you there?
I don't think so.
Not necessarily? Okay. So I guess that was like somebody else. I guess maybe they want to feel like they are, I don't know, saving the world or on a grander scheme or something. I mean, that's their own take as well. And then it says most men, we just view church as irrelevant to daily lives or concerns. We have a lot of things to think about. So why should we just be sitting in the pews when we could be doing other things and then have our time with God? So that they're saying the way that people view their absence doesn't necessarily mean they are not talking to God. Your face.
No, it's not it. Like every point being listed. Okay, let me say every excuse makes sense.
Yes.
So that is why when you ask me, I did because I can make things up just because I don't want to be in church. Right. So that is why I didn't want to go deeper into it. But things that I believe will foster men coming to church mostly. Like growing up, my culture is like every Sunday there's no work. I mean, from back home, Sunday churches are busy. Every household is going to church. Right. So it was when I came here, that is when you see people don't really like. And over here, we travel here to make life better for ourselves. So, and over here on Sundays, on weekends, when you go to work, you make more money compared to the regular days, right? So, it's known for people to say, let me make more money on the weekend. That is why most people go in for work. That is what I understand. But growing up, the community on Sunday it's busy. Everybody's going to church. We have men fellowship. We have young adult, which has men. We have so the men are actually active in the church. But when I came here, that is where you have a different view of like so environment plays. I'm sure Aiden said the same thing. The environment plays a big role where you find yourself, and I think maybe homes also talking more about church and Christ and God. Not it's not just saying just the surface of these like Christians and belief, because even when you read the Bible, it was mostly men that took major roles in the Bible, right? So the more we emphasize on roles on men, the more we take time to talk about what the man can do in the church. I think it will draw more men to come to church.
I'm sorry. Because you're right. I was thinking about what Aiden said about the lack of masculinity in the church, and I found that strange because most church leadership is mostly men. In our church, it's most men. We have one who is in leadership position, but everyone else is men. And I've not seen a church yet that is not man-led.
Yeah.
So some of that masculinity that you're talking about is stereotypical masculinity, and some of it might even borderline on that phrase toxic masculinity. When you said the guys are fighting, they fight or they wrestle or whatever they're doing, and that's not, I don't know if that's masculine or just a show of aggression because that's what they do. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't think that when I look at men, in my mind, it may be because I've learned to reframe what I see as a man. This discipline is something that makes me look and admire men. Men of discipline is an admirable quality. If a man is disciplined in the rules that you talked about, the rules and regulations that would define the decisions that he makes, a man who has that is very attractive. And
Easy to respect.
yes, easy to respect and to submit to that authority, whatever their role is in the church. So those things are important for a man to have, whether he realizes it or not. We like the idea of men that are in the military because they are submitted to their authority figures and they are very disciplined and regimented, and we appreciate and when they come out, aside from whatever emotional things or psychological things they might have to deal with, they have a discipline. They've learned a discipline, and they've learned to discipline their life. They are not the same as before when they got in. So it's those qualities are, I think men need them, and they don't even realize that they need them.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's hard, like giving out all of things that you think you can do and following rules and regulations. That is why prisons are full of men, I guess, right? Because we want to be able to take charge and explore and do things, right? So when you try to limit us, we can't just what, and that is one thing. When you want to submit all your authority to God, it makes it hard and difficult for some men, some people to say, I give it all to God. And that is like the hardest thing to say, that I give it all to God, despite everything the person has done or someone has hurt you, and you just, I leave it to God. So as a man, I know Aiden said the same thing. You feel like you don't have what it takes to be a man. You are not strong enough, you are not masculine enough, because as a man, when someone hits you, that's what you have been taught. He hits you, hit him back. So to let go of that, then if I don't come to church and listen to all of these things, I can go out there, be what the society, what the world want me to be.
But then that's the misconception, because we are not looking at your biceps and how your six packs and your muscles, and gauging that as strength, because we're looking for someone that when things need to be handled, are you responsible? Are you disciplined? Can you stand up to the plate? We are not going around fighting, like starting troubles where you have to be using your muscles, fighting and boxing people. We want peace, Obviously, it's great to look good, but that shouldn't be something that is at the back of the mind of a person. Like, oh, I just have to be strong, I have to be in the gym all the time, and all that stuff. That's the only way women are going to look at me. We are looking for somebody with insight, like, what is your inside made out of?
It's just
You know.
when your priorities
Yeah.
are not aligned.
Because it's a misconception. I feel like it's not talked about. So maybe what you guys are thinking is weakness when you come and submit to God. To us, that is something that actually attracts us, because we're like, wow, this person, they understand who made them. They understand who holds their breath. Yeah, because, if God decides he wants to take your breath away, as much as you are macho, you have six pack, you got all the money in the world, your life just ends. He can just plug you. So if you don't understand who holds your breath and your life in in his hands, I would feel like I'm in a vulnerable place if I place my life in your hands. And like when we come to church, sometimes you see, like you're saying, the church space is a lot of women that are working and moving around and doing things. It's not necessarily that women want to do that. We want men to be our strength, but because the men are not coming, they are not stepping up to the plate. As women, we don't want to look at our children and see our children go down the drain. So we have to step up now. As women, we have to be teachers. As women, we have to be leaders, not because we are trying to take your positions, but because the men are just not around. And if you are, like, let's say a woman and you have your child, you're hoping your child grows up to be someone great. But if your spouse or your husband is not even exhibiting those traits, who's going to train your child? Who's going to train your son? Which goes to the point that one of the brothers sent in to say that sometimes churches are lacking mentors. They said, like, the guys come in, they want to do something, but they don't really know where to start. They don't know what to do. So I think it's up to us, like when a young man comes in, an old man comes in, or whatever, step up to them and be like, oh, hi, we welcome you. And that did you like the service? What did you like about the service? We need a lot more hands to help in the church. Is there any way you can help us? We can fit you in one of the departments so we can get your service. So I think if we are open enough to approach these men and tell them we need you, because yes, we do need them. But when they come, we're just like, you're not dressed well, or you don't look like you're put together, and we push them away, then they don't want to come back again the next time. Because you're saying sometimes you feel judged, right?
Oh.
Not you, but I'm
Yeah.
saying men in general. Like before you grow to actually get connected to God. And I feel like before you grow to get connected, not just as a man, and that's a misconception that every woman that comes in is saved. We are also trying our best to actually know God. We are trying our best to get plugged in and connected to God. But somebody has to serve, somebody has to work, right? So in that process, all those people that are serving, nobody's perfect, like you said. Just because you're serving or you have a position doesn't mean you got it together. But you bring what you have, and with time, the faith grows. So I wish more men more brothers out there, whoever is listening, that, they won't look at church and think it's for women. Yeah. And when you come to church, if you feel like crying, cry. There's nothing wrong with that. It's how you feel. Let God work through you. It's okay. We come and we cry here. We don't be looking cute or whatever. Yeah, we be embarrassed beyond measure. But, we are looking for something beyond the outward and the physical thing. So I don't know if you guys gleaned anything from, because we definitely learned a lot.
Yeah.
about how you guys want to be viewed. Anybody want to share what stood out the most to them, or what they will be looking out for going forth?
Before we wrap up, I just wanted to go back to what Mom was saying, where she was talking about how I mentioned the Hebrew Israelites and how they fight. When I said fight, when I was talking about that, I was more so trying to shed light on like the brotherhood aspect of it. Like in church, there's a lack of like discipleship for men. Like men can come to church, but there's no, and that's there's exactly, and that's why men would typically look more forward to those groups like the Nation of Islam and Hebrew Israelites, because they have that core
The
group of
bond-
men
the bond
they
is
could talk to
strong.
about anything. Like men don't feel like they can really talk to women about anything, and I think that's just a natural thing. But I feel like in church, there's a lack of, like you said, mentorship and discipleship from men. Yeah.
So we do need more men to step up to the plate
Mhm.
to teach other men how to be, accountable men. Like the movie The Forge.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, you saw how he was pulling in men from both ages, and they would spend time sitting and they would work on their strengths and accountability to say, oh, can you make it to work on time?
Right.
Are you fulfilling your word? That kind of thing. So we actually need men to be able to teach the men, you know.
Right.
It's unfortunate that sometimes women have to be taking those roles to teach because we are lacking men. But if there are men out there and you know that you have something to offer, reach out to a young man, old man, somebody, and have them grow to be not just like we're just calling you to just come and fill the pews so we could say, oh, you're saved, but really come and be saved and learn to love God, learn to love yourselves so you can love your families and people around you. It's a process. We are all trying to learn. We are all loving ourselves through the grace of God. Because sometimes the journeys of life are hard, and it takes us to acknowledge that, our source is God. But at the end of the day, we need those communities, like you said. We need the groups.
Yeah.
Yeah, we as women, we find strength in each other,
Right.
so it's also great to have men come together, find strength, and then you build something that also we can look up to.
Personally, I think creating awareness to things like these things make people wake up. Right. I from like I keep saying, from my background, I never really focused on it. Like men don't really love to come. I never experienced it because growing up, family, we all go to church Sunday, nobody is left in the house. Right? So the household, the families that were close by, we are always going to church.
Your parents would whoop you if you didn't go.
Exactly, right?
Here, there's freedom.
So I never really see that picture that men don't go. And most of my friends actually that I grew up with till now are from the church. So I never really see that picture that most men don't go to church. Or it never really dawned on me to really pay much attention to it. But I believe now that we are talking about it, if the church as a whole bring these topics out, start talking about them, because now the church is getting the media space. So the more we reach to the masses, the more we reach to the world with these messages that the word need most men, or Christ need men to also stand up for the kingdom. And we bring up all of these attributes. Like I said in the scripture, there were men that hold things up. Christ himself worked with great men, the apostles. So the more we share light on it, make people realize you are needed, and God can do so much with you as a man. I'm sure it will wake a lot of men up to come, and when they do come, we work on them and let them take the spaces that needs to be occupied. We don't limit them. We don't find ways and means to limit. You have to have your hair cut like this. You have to dress like this. Like some things needs to be taken out. And what I keep bringing this up. Some churches have so much doctrines that are not even in the Bible, right? From I know this has been like a therapy, so some churches have some doctrines that is hard to follow, right? So it makes it difficult for people to even come to know God. And that is one thing I want to stress upon, that as we go to church, as we find ourselves in churches, I'm pleading that, like, the leadership of churches will talk more of what Christ will do, and not what you have experienced and make it a doctrine in a church. So what will Christ do? Let us go through the Bible and pick those principles instead of using doctrines that maybe we have experienced or an encounter that God gave you, so that men can really find space in the churches.
That was very insightful. As you were speaking, I just kept thinking of in the book of Exodus, it talks about how families used to write, God said, write the word, the tablets on your heart, like a tablet on your heart. And make sure that every one of your children, your household, knows these laws and regulations, rules and commandments, right? So I feel like in order for the world to thrive, we need men that are rooted in God.
That's true.
Yeah. In order for our children nowadays, especially, like you were mentioning, the Gen Z, to not lose themselves and the generations that are going to come, we need the men now to rise up, to step up to the plate and train and teach the young ones so they can do the right thing. Don't be the one of the men out there that is causing young men and old men to lose their lives. We need men that are going to leave legacies, men that are not going to be afraid to come and stand up and talk about the right things and not feel like, oh, they're going to be called weak. Because those things that you stand up for is what will make you strong and will save nations and generations to come. So the fact that there are few men in church, that is the truth. The sisters are suffering because, yes, so our brothers are on the streets, it's killing us. And then our sons are going on the streets, it's killing us. So we are pleading with you, the men on the streets, the men at work, choosing work over God, whatever your excuse is. It seems very legit. Or the men that want to sleep in on a Sunday, that's the only day you get, so you just don't want to be bothered. Please make time, because you will save a life. Like the movie yesterday, what was the
A question of faith.
yeah, the question of faith. And then they made a theme at the end with the son that was lost, that
Not texting while driving.
yeah, do not text while driving. But it took someone that had to step up and speak, and because of that they had that 1,000 save lives thing. Like, if you just say something, you might save 1,000 lives.
By
So-
donating,
Yeah, by donating, by whatever activity you also do in church. So hopefully this was helpful and very insightful. Guys, thank you for sharing and opening your hearts
Thank you.
to give us your truths. And ladies, thank you for also grilling them and asking for them to explain why we have few men in church. This will help us both to reflect and get better. So if you have any questions, leave comments, subscribe, share, and wait for the next episode. If you have topics you want us to address, leave them below, and then we will also come back with our beautiful people, and we will grill each other on live television. Everybody, take care.
Bye bye.
Bye,
Peace.
guys.